The hum of the plane's engines felt strangely comforting to James Matthews. The vibrations through his seat were steady. The deep rumbling, a constant companion, as Flight 126M ascended into the sky. But something didn't feel right. The air felt thick, as if the storm clouds surrounding the plane held secrets that were just out of reach. His fingers gripped the armrest, the tension mounting with every inch. The plane climbed out. There was a deep unease growing in his chest. One he couldn't explain, but one that gnawed at him with every passing minute. He tried to ignore it, to push it away as he had so many times before. As a seasoned pilot, James knew turbulence, and he knew what it felt like to be in control. But this was different. This wasn't the familiar jolt of a few minutes of bumps. This was something darker, something he couldn't quite grasp. James cast a quick glance around the cabin. He saw the other passengers, their faces tense, clutching the armrests like him. Some had closed their eyes, trying to calm their nerves, while others looked out the window, no doubt wondering what was going on. The lights flickered briefly, and then the captain's voice came over the intercom. "We are currently encountering some unexpected turbulence." The captain's voice crackled. "Please remain seated, with your seatbelt fastened. We'll be through this in just a moment." But James couldn't shake the sense of dread that had settled over him. It was as if something unseen was waiting for them. The air outside was thick with storm clouds, swirling in violent bursts. He leaned back in his seat, trying to calm his mind, but the unease only grew stronger. It was the promise he had made to his daughter, Emily. That promise was now weighing heavy on him. James had never been one for superstition, never one to believe in signs or omens, but today felt different. Every fiber of his being was on edge. The promise he had made to Emily when she was just a little girl echoed in his mind. "I'll always be there for you, sweetheart, no matter what happens. That's a promise I'll keep forever." The words came to him without hesitation, as if they had been written into his soul. It was the promise of a father to his daughter, a vow that no matter where life took them, no matter how far apart they might be, he would always be there, always his. Grip tightened on the armrest again as the plane lurched, the jolts becoming more frequent, the turbulence intensifying. James's breath quickened. He had always been able to stay calm in situations like this, but now, as the lights flickered and the plane shuddered beneath him, the cold fingers of fear gripped his heart. Could he keep that promise? Could he protect her if he didn't make it through this flight? The thought of never seeing Emily again, never getting to watch her grow, never being there to guide her through the challenges of life, it was almost too much to bear. His heart tightened at the thought of all the moments they would never share, of all the dreams he had for her that would never come true. "I love you, sweetheart, always." The words slipped from his lips, but they felt hollow. He wasn't sure if he was saying them for his own comfort, or for the girl he loved more than life itself. Emily had been the light in his life, the reason he had pushed through every challenge. She was the one he had always promised to protect, no matter the cost. His thoughts were interrupted by another lurch of the plane. This time, it was sharper, more violent, and it sent a ripple of panic through the cabin. He looked up. The flight attendants were moving quickly, securing the aisles and calming passengers. James's eyes flickered toward the cockpit door. He knew the captain was doing his best, trying to navigate through the storm. But the rising tension in the air was undeniable. Something was wrong, and James couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The plane shuddered again, and this time, the seatbelt sign flashed on. James instinctively fastened his seatbelt, though it felt like an unnecessary gesture. He was a man who prided himself on being in control, on understanding every aspect of his life, from his job to his family. But today, nothing felt right. The air in the cabin felt thick, the press of the storm growing heavier by the minute. As the turbulence continued to intensify, James's thoughts drifted back to the promise he had made. Emily, his sweet bright-eyed daughter, had always been the center of his world. He had never hesitated to reassure her, to promise her that he would always be there to guide her. He had said those words so many times that they had become a part of their shared reality. But now, as the plane lurched again, the weight of that promise felt heavier than it ever had before. He could feel his body begin to sweat, his heart pounding faster than it should. There was a strange peace that came over him in that moment, though. A quiet acceptance, a surrender to whatever was to come. He had done everything he could for Emily. He had given her the tools to succeed in life, to become a strong, independent woman. He had done his best to protect her from the harshness of the world. But now, as the plane continued to dip and dive through the violent storm, he wasn't sure if he could keep that promise. And so, in that moment, As the plane shook violently once again, James reached for his phone. His fingers trembled as he unlocked it. He didn't need to type out a long message. All he needed were the words that had been in his heart since the day Emily was born. I love you, Emily. Always and forever. He typed it quickly, pressing the keys one by one. But it felt like a lifetime before the message was complete. He hit send. The words left his screen. But they didn't leave his heart. In that instant, as the plane continued to shake, James finally felt some semblance of peace. He had done what he could. He had kept his promise, even if it meant that he wouldn't be there to hold her hand anymore. To see her smile, to tell her all the things a father tells his daughter. And in that moment, as the plane jolted again, James knew that no matter what happened next, Emily would always know that her father loved her. The turbulence was unrelenting now, like a beast clawing at the belly of the plane. James gripped the armrest harder, his knuckles white, his breathing shallow. It wasn't just the violent shakes that sent his heart into overdrive. It was the sense that something terrible was about to happen. The storm outside had turned into a relentless roar, thrashing against the plane as if it were a mere toy in the hands of an angry child. Every moment felt like an eternity. Every jolt, every twist of the plane, felt as if it were inching closer to something inevitable. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom again, this time with an urgency that James couldn't ignore. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing severe turbulence. Please remain seated, with your seatbelts fastened. We are doing our best to navigate through this. Stay calm, stay alert. James closed his eyes for a moment, trying to steady his breath, but the anxiety that had taken root deep in his chest was too strong. Stay calm, he told himself. Stay calm. He was a man who had seen danger up close, who had dealt with far worse situations in his life. But this was different. This felt like a countdown. Each second that passed, each violent lurch of the plane, felt like the universe was slowly but surely unraveling, pulling him into the unknown. His mind drifted back to Emily again. Her face, her sweet smile, her voice calling out for him. Daddy, will you always be there for me? That simple question echoed in his mind, louder now than ever before. And even though he had already sent her that final message, he still couldn't shake the feeling that she needed him, that he wasn't done yet, that he hadn't fulfilled his promise to protect her. He closed his eyes again, willing the images to fade. He had to stay focused. There was nothing more he could do now. His final message had been sent. But even knowing that, he couldn't escape the deep-rooted guilt gnawing at him. Was it enough? Would she understand? Would she ever know the depth of his love for her, even if he wasn't there to tell her in person? Another violent shake snapped him back to the present. His heart raced as he looked around the cabin. People were visibly frightened, some whispering prayers, others clutching the armrests with desperate grips. A young woman sitting a few rows ahead of him was crying softly, her face pale with fear. An older man gripped the armrest next to him, his fingers digging deep into the leather, as if he could stop the plane's descent through sheer force of will. The chaos in the cabin was palpable, the fear contagious. Everyone was bracing for what they knew deep down was coming. James tried to stay calm, but his mind kept racing. He thought of his wife, who had passed away years ago. The woman who had always been by his side. The woman who had been there to share the joys and sorrows of raising Emily. And now, here he was, alone in this moment. Alone in the storm. And, soon, possibly, alone forever. His mind then turned back to his daughter. Would she be okay? Would she remember the things he had taught her? Would she know that he had given everything? Every bit of his love, his time, his heart for her, to be safe, happy, and fulfilled. He thought of all the things they would never do together. He thought of the future that would remain a dream, of the moments he would never get to witness. He thought of her first day of school, her first love, the day she would get married. Would he be there to walk her down the aisle? Would he be there to hold her hand through the tough times, to share in her triumphs and sorrows? Would he ever get to see the woman she would become? The thought of all that, of everything that would never be, felt like a weight crashing down on him, suffocating him. His breath hitched, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to feel the full force of that loss. But then, just as quickly, he let it go. He had to let it go. He had done his best. He had made his promise to Emily. And now, all he could do was trust that she would remember him, that she would carry his love with her, no matter where life took her. Another lurch shook the plane, and this time, James could feel the descent. He looked out the window, his eyes straining to see through the thick, swirling clouds. The storm outside was a living thing, a beast, tearing at the fabric of the sky. And as the plane continued its descent, James could feel the inevitable pulling him closer, like a magnet drawing him to his final destination. The captain's voice came through the intercom again. But this time, it was different. The tone was strained. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are descending. Stay in your seats. Stay calm." James's heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced. His fingers gripped the seatbelt tight, but his body felt heavy, as if every ounce of strength had been drained from him. The fear was overwhelming now, but in the midst of it, a strange calm washed over him. The storm outside, the chaos in the cabin, the turbulence, all of it seemed far away. In that moment, James felt a sense of peace. A peace that only came when one truly understood the weight of their own mortality. This was it. The final countdown. Thought of Emily once more. He thought of the years he had spent with her, the moments they had shared. All the hugs, the laughs, the tears. And even though he wouldn't be there to see her grow into the woman she was destined to become, he knew one thing for sure: he had kept his promise. His love for her was unbreakable, no matter what happened. As the plane lurched again, the descent quickened. James's grip on the armrest tightened, his breath shallow. But there was no fear anymore. There was only a sense of peace, a final acceptance. His love for Emily would never die. Even if he didn't survive this crash, his promise to her would remain. He closed his eyes, and in the final moments, as the plane neared the ground, he whispered once more, almost like a prayer, "I love you, Emily, always and forever." And then, the world went black. The sound of the plane ripping through the air was deafening. It was the kind of sound that would have been heard miles away, a monstrous roar as the aircraft, once a symbol of human achievement, now trembled in the storm like a fragile leaf, caught in a violent wind. The lights flickered in and out, casting eerie shadows across the cabin. The wind outside shrieked like a wild animal, a symphony of chaos, its fury matching the terror brewing inside the plane. James Matthews could feel the pressure building inside the plane. The descent was now faster than it had ever been, and with each passing second, it seemed the world was closing in on him. The force of the descent pressed harder on his chest, and he knew deep down that the worst was coming. This was no longer turbulence. This was no longer a battle with the sky. This was a fight for survival, one that they were losing, and losing quickly. The captain's voice came over the intercom, but it was distant now, like a fading echo. "Braced for impact. Everyone, hold on. This is not a drill." Those words, "brace for impact," echoed in James's mind, and for a moment, time seemed to stretch. The world outside, the storm, the screeching wind, it all seemed to blur together into a single, distorted image. It was as if everything around him was happening in slow motion, and yet, his heart was racing, beating in double time. His breath was shallow, his vision narrowing. It was too real, too raw. He looked around the cabin. The faces of the passengers were all filled with the same primal fear. Some were already in tears, some praying, some gripping whatever they could find to hold on to. There was no escape from the reality of the situation. The plane was going down, and there was no way out. The crash was inevitable. James's eyes landed on a young mother, a few rows ahead of him, clutching her infant to her chest, her face pale with fear. He couldn't help but feel the sharp pang of empathy for her. She was holding her child tightly, trying to shield him from what was coming. The child, too young to understand, had no idea that this would be his last flight, his last experience on this earth. James wished, more than anything, that he could shield her, and the others, from the agony that was surely coming. But he couldn't. No one could. The plane lurched again, this time more violently than ever before. The sensation of falling intensified, as if gravity itself had taken hold of them. James could hear the metal of the plane groaning under the pressure. There was a loud snap, and the lights above flickered out completely, plunging them into darkness. The only sound left was the screech of the wind and the steady roar of the engines. Struggling against the storm, James braced himself. He gripped the armrests with every ounce of strength left in him. He could feel the plane's wings buckling under the pressure. And for the first time in his life, he understood what true helplessness felt like. He had always prided himself on being in control, on being the one who could keep everything together. But now, there was nothing he could do. No amount of skill, no amount of training could change the inevitable. As the plane continued its descent, the finality of the situation began to settle in. James's thoughts, once filled with frantic worry, slowed down. The chaotic world around him seemed too quiet, and all he could focus on was Emily, his daughter, his sweet, beautiful Emily. In his final moments, As the plane fell toward the earth, all James could think of was her. He thought of the day she was born, the way she had wrapped her tiny hand around his finger. He thought of her first steps, her first words, the way she had looked up to him with eyes full of admiration. He thought of the way she had hugged him when she was scared, the way she had trusted him without question. "I love you, Emily, always and forever," he whispered again, his voice barely audible over the roar of the wind and the engine. The plane lurched once more, and James knew this was it. There was no more time. There was no more waiting. The world outside was no longer just a storm. It had become the very thing that was taking him away from everything he loved. He felt the weight of it all, the overwhelming sensation of loss. And yet, in that final moment, there was peace. His love for Emily was all that mattered, all that remained. Even as the world around him disintegrated, that love, that promise, would never fade. The world around James became a blur. His vision darkened, the edges of his consciousness slipping away. And then, with a terrifying jolt, everything shattered. There was a deafening crash, the sound of metal twisting, of glass breaking, of the very foundation of the plane being ripped apart. The force was overwhelming. A violent explosion of sound and light that filled the air. In the split second before the world went dark, James thought of Emily one last time. His sweet girl, his daughter, the one person who had always made him believe in something greater, something beyond himself. And as the world around him collapsed, he held on to that thought, knowing in his heart that he had kept his promise. "I love you," he whispered, even though there was no one left to hear him. The world around him faded into oblivion. "My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened, and I am no longer with you. But know this, my sweet girl, my love for you will never die. I promised you that I would always be there for you, and I know that this promise may seem impossible now, but I am with you. I always will be, in the space between your breath, in every step you take, in every choice you make. You may not see me, but I'll be there. In the quiet moments, in the joyful ones, I'll be there, guiding you with the love we shared. You are my heart, Emily. You always have been. Please, live your life with love, with courage, with strength. Know that I am proud of you always. I love you, always and forever, your father." Emily sat there, in stunned silence, the letter crumpled in her hands. She had expected to find something, but this was more than she could have ever hoped for. Her father's final message, his words of love, of reassurance, gave her something to hold on to, something to carry with her for the rest of her life. Tears flowed down her face as she read the letter again and again, each time feeling the weight of his love, his presence, in every word. Even in death, her father had found a way to comfort her. His love had not died with him. It lived on in this letter, in the promise he had made, in the way he had always been there for her. Even in his final moments, the loss was still there, sharp and painful, but now, there was something else, something that would stay with her for the rest of her life. A sense of peace. A sense of connection to her father, even though he was gone. His love had transcended time and space, and it would always be there, no matter where life took her. Years passed. Emily grew older, and life moved forward. She finished school, started a career, and eventually built a family of her own. But, through it all, her father's love remained with her. It was there in the quiet moments, when she needed guidance. In the moments of joy, when she wished he could have been there to see her succeed. Every decision she made was colored by the memory of her father. She lived her life with the strength and courage he had always believed she possessed. She took each step forward, knowing that his love was still with her, guiding her, protecting her from afar. And when she had children of her own, she whispered the words her father had whispered to her all those years ago: "I love you, always and forever." As Emily sat on the porch, watching her children play in the yard, she closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the peaceful evening air. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting a golden light across the landscape. The sounds of her children's laughter filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. And in that moment, she felt it. The quiet presence of her father, a constant companion that would never fade. She could almost hear his voice in the wind, whispering the words she had always needed to hear. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart." She smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek, and whispered back, "I love you, Dad, always and forever."